Alright, so at this stage, you learned about the types of brushes, you learned about basic kinds of primitive brushes that Unreal gives you to work with, and also you learn about how to add different kinds of geometry. You can add additive geometry, you can subtract geometry, that they would be basically solid brushes, or you could add special kinds of brushes to your geometry. You could add non-solid or semi-solid brushes, and we talked about them in a previous video. Now, also we talked about combining two brushes, basically solid geometry in the level and a brush, and use the intersect or de-intersect to change your brush shape to the intersection of the two or to the difference of the two brushes. But Unreal has a much more effective and a much more sophisticated mechanism to help you with creating complex geometry. And that is basically done through the geometry mode and the brush manipulation techniques. In the UT3 editor, you had the brush manipulation or geometry mode that had basically a geometry tool, or what is called the selection mode, and you could, with the selection mode, you could select to work in the vertex mode or the edge mode or the face mode or even the object mode. In UDK, or the latest versions of Unreal Editor, the specific kinds of selection has become obsolete, and when you're in geometry mode, with whatever object you're interacting with, you will automatically be transferred into that mode, so you don't have to choose between different kinds of modes, and we'll see how these actually work. So let's suppose that you have this brush set up here in the perspective view and in your other views. So my red builder brush is basically right now a cube brush, and so you have it here. And when you go to geometry mode, which is the icon on the left side of the screen, the geometry mode, or you can alternatively press Shift 2, you will be automatically transferred to geometry mode, and your geometry tools will become active. And notice that there are two different kinds of modifiers that you can work with. There is the passive modifier, which is the set of modifiers on top, and the active modifiers. They are the modifiers at the bottom. The active modifiers will apply the changes or perform the modifications that you want them by just simply clicking on them. And on the passive modifiers, whatever modifications that you make, you have to click apply or press enter for the modification to be applied or to take place on your brush or on your geometry. And in the Unreal Development Kit, or UDK, which is the development editor that we will be using, you will change your modification setting from vertex to edge to face or to polygon by just simply clicking on them. And when you click on each of these items, a specific set of modifications, either active or passive modifiers, will be highlighted or will be activated or enabled, and the ones that you cannot apply on that particular kind of geometry will be disabled, as you see here. So for example, if you click on a vertex here in one of the viewports, you will be moved to vertex modification, and as you see, the edit modifier will be activated, and the pen modifiers will be activated from the passive modifiers, and from the active modifiers you will have create, delete, split, and weld modifiers active. And as you see here, when you click on one of the vertices in a orthographic viewport, all of the vertices that are stacked on top of each other will be activated. To activate only one, you should select that vertex with the perspective viewport, as you see here. If you wanted to apply a modification on a face, you would just simply click on a face in the perspective viewport, and then you will see that you can, from the modifiers, passive modifiers, you will have edit and extrude modifiers, and from the active modifiers, you will have delete, flip, triangulate, and optimize. And I'll show you what each of those mean. And if you just click on an edge, and selecting an edge is a bit tricky in the perspective viewport. Okay, here I selected the edge, and in the edge you will see that the turn and split modifiers will be activated, and also you can have pen or edit modifiers. And so in vertex, edge, or face modes, you will have different modifiers at your disposal that you could use. Before we start, let me talk a little bit about alignment of your brushes in the geometry mode. When you're in the geometry mode, you can basically align your objects to the grid points, and by simply right-clicking on a vertex, and when you do that, it automatically snaps into the closest grid point. For example, if I had a cylindrical object, as you see, this cylindrical object is not aligned with any of the grid points, and if you right-click on each of its vertices, basically selecting them and then right-clicking it once, you will essentially snap it into the closest grid. And so basically this will help you create or align your objects properly to the proper grid point. Alright, let's just click on our box modifier one more time, and let me just go ahead within this geometry mode and show you how each of these modifications are applied and work with your brushes. Let's first talk about this passive modifiers on top and see how they are applied to your brushes. So if you click on say your builder brush and you move your vertex, for example, or these two vertices, you could edit your builder brush in that way, basically by editing or moving the faces of your brush. Maybe if you wanted to scale one of the faces, you could click on the face and scale it up, or for example scaling down another face, and so forth. So the edit modifier is applied in that way, and when you click on apply, all of the modifications that you had implemented will be applied. Let's click on your cube brush one more time, and let's choose one of the faces. If you click, let's say, the face on the top, then you can have the extrude modifier. If you click on extrude modifier, you will be able to apply an extrusion on the face. And so just look at the perspective viewport. If you click apply once, the face will be extruded 64 units along the z-axis, which is the normal, to the face, and it will create only one segment. Let's say that you wanted to extrude a little bit less. Let's say at 32 points, you could move the length of the extrusion to 32 points and then click extrude one more time. And as you see here, your extrusion is applied 32 units on the face. And then you could move back to the edit modifier, and then you could scale up the extrusion that you made, and then go to extrude more one more time, apply it, and then go back to the edit and scale up some more. Go back to extrusion, apply it, and then go back to edit and scale up some more, and then go back to extrusion, apply, and then go back to edit and scale down. Go back to extrusion, apply, go back to edit, scale down some more. Go back to extrusion, apply it, go back to edit, scale down some more. And this way you can create a complex brush essentially that looks like what we have here. So say a nightstand kind of thing. And then you can apply and add geometry. Right? So then go to camera mode, choose your brush, and move it out of the way. And this way you can create a complex shape as you see here, by extrusion and edit and extrude and edit and extrude and edit on faces, and you can create these kinds of geometries. That's the extrusion and edit geometry on the faces. Okay, the brush clip is actually a nice tool that will allow you to cut the geometry in two pieces, or cut in two pieces, keep one, and remove the other. Let's just create 3 different additive brushes here. Okay, these are my 3 brushes that I have. Now if I go to edit geometry and choose any of these brushes, as you see here, I can apply the cut on them. And to apply a brush clip, or to clip your brushes, you can basically choose a brush and then move your mouse pointer somewhere outside the brush, and then press spacebar and drag your brush, and either press spacebar one more time, and that creates a clipping plane for your brush, or you could press Control and left click, and when you have 2 clipping points, and create your clipping surface, or clipping plane, and then click on apply, that would basically clip your geometry in 2. If you click on flip normal, it would basically change the geometry that it will keep, and if you click split, it would split your geometry in 2. Okay, so let's apply our clip. So if you apply clip by applying on the brush that you have here, what happens is that your brush will, the geometry behind the clipping normal will be clipped and kept. If you apply the flip normal and then click on clip, the geometry that is kept is going to be the one that is on the side of the normal, which is this red perpendicular line. And if you basically click on split, your geometry will be split in 2. So to show you what happens, I have the clipping plane set up, and I clip without the normal set up, and then I clip this brush with the normal set up, and then I clip this third brush by setting the split. And choose the brush and split it in 2. And then I'll move this bottom brush a little bit so you would see the split. Okay, and then let's move back to the edit geometry, and here are the brushes. Let me just build geometry one more time. So in the perspective viewport, you see the geometry that is created, and the first geometry was created with not flipping the normal, by clipping. The second geometry is with the flip normal, and the third geometry is basically when you split the geometry in 2. So if you wanted, for example, the top column to be kind of sort of split in 2, just to kind of give the visual about a ruined temple, you could clip and split the columns at various parts and just rotate the objects as though they fell down. Okay, so for example, I can pick this this brush, go to the camera mode, and then rotate this brush on one of the vertices at the bottom here. And so if I rotate the brush this way, it will, and build the geometry, it will look like as if this brush has fell down. Okay, and build geometry. So now it looks like the brush fell down. And this piece of geometry it fell down, and then you could move it in place. So right click on the vertex and then build the geometry and rotate along this pivot point. And build your lighting. And if you play the game, this will essentially be how the geometries are clipped. Delete this pre-made geometry, and so this would look a lot better now. Okay, and so you can use these techniques to create different kinds of pieces for your temple. Okay, now that we've seen the passive modifiers, let's talk a little bit about active modifiers. And those are the ones that you see at the bottom here. And these active modifiers are basically changed a little bit. Some of them are still the same, but some of them are changed a little bit. And one of them, the active modifier that is actually and one of the passive modifiers that we haven't talked about is the pen modifier that allows you to create complex geometries. And within the with the pen modifier, you can use the lathe modifier to even create more complex topology in your model. Let's before we talk about pen and lathe, let me show you a little bit about how your passive modifiers work. If you look at this object that, or this piece of geometry that I have here, or the brush that I have here, you can use some passive modifiers on this face. For example, flips your faces, and when you flip a face, one thing that you need to remember is one of the faces on each of the pieces of geometry that you create is visible. So if you flip a face, then you would basically make its visible face to kind of point backwards, and this might have serious complications in your geometry. I created my geometry, and since I flipped the face here, that face that is flipped, as you see here, is not visible because the visible part of the face, or the visible face of the polygon, is now flipped. Okay, so when you do this, then your geometry will, or the renderable or the seeable face of your geometry will be flipped. So you can, if some of your geometry is unseen, you can flip the faces so you can see the faces. Another option that you have on the face, you can triangulate them. So you click on triangulate, the piece of geometry that you have created will basically turn into, or will be split into triangles that make up that face. And for some complex faces and polygons, because your Unreal is optimized to render triangles very, very efficiently, you will triangulate those faces to make sure that your geometry will not act in a weird way. And if you click on optimize, the parts of the pieces of the geometry that are created and made of a bunch of triangles, they would be basically optimized into the smallest number of polygons and vertices and triangles possible for the geometry. So I clicked on optimize, and notice these vertices up top here and some of the vertices in the middle, they will be eliminated because they are not an essential part of rendering of this geometry. Under the vertex mode, for example, if you click on this top vertex up here, you will have a delete option. If you click on delete, that vertex will be removed. You will have the option of creating vertices, so you can click on create and choose a number of vertices around the whole, and when you click on create, a face will be placed on top of the vertices there. So just to show you how it works, let's just delete one of these faces. Okay, and then we'll go to the vertex mode, and then we choose the vertices. By clicking on control, by holding the control, and then press create, and this will create your vertices. Basically, or the face that I created here is essentially pointing downwards. And let me actually undo these changes and choose the vertices in a counterclockwise order. And when you click on create, a face will be created that points outwards. So if you want to see where the face points, you should use the left hand rule. And basically, if your fingers of the left hand go in the order of the vertex selection, the thumb will be pointing toward the outside facing of your triangle. And if you create your geometry, you will see that the face is generated as we intended it to be. Alright, now let's talk a little bit about the weld option. Weld basically welds your vertices, and what happens is that if you select a number of vertices, all of them will be welded to the first one that you selected. For example, if you look at up here on top of this triangle, if I click on this vertex, hold the control button, and then click on the one to the right of it, and then click weld, both of them will be welded to the first one that I chose. At the bottom, for example, if you choose the vertices, the bottom right, and then go around the corner, and then if you click on weld, all of them will be welded with the one that I selected the first time. And then you can create your geometry, and here's how your geometry would look like when you weld your vertices. Now let's go to the clean slate here, and let's look around here. And so next I want to show you how the pen modifier works. If you click on the pen modifier, you could create a piece of geometry by drawing it. So let's just suppose that we go to the top corner, or the top viewport, as you see at the bottom here, and then I'll use just the pen modifier, and by pressing spacebar you could draw or create vertices as you see here. And when you click the spacebar while you're moving the mouse, you could add vertices. And if you click the spacebar on the first vertex that you created, your geometry will be created. And here is the geometry that is created by the pen geometry. If you click on auto extrude, it automatically extrudes after you finish your geometry. You can click on convex polygons, and that would automatically ensure that your all of the polygons are convex. And so, for example, this triangle is automatically created to make sure that the polygons, all of them, are convex, because convex polygons are efficient in terms of drawing your geometry. And the extrusion depth, or the extrude depth, shows you how many units your geometry will extrude. So for example, if you decrease your extrusion depth, say to 123, and then you press spacebar for each vertex, and you create your vertices and press spacebar, smaller objects will be created compared to the other one that we had. Okay, and then you can add geometry accordingly. Alright, so this is the pen modifier. Now with the pen modifier and creating and clicking on the create brush shape, you could use lathe, the lathe modifier. And the lathe modifier would take a shape, basically what we just created with the pen modifier, and then an extrusion angle or a rotation angle to create a complex shape. So let me show you how this works. So to create a lathe object, you just click on the create brush shape, and then you create the shape that you wanted for the lathe modifier. Okay, so here I'm creating the shape, and once your shape is created, then you can click on lathe modifier, and then you can have a number of segments. So if I create 4 segments, and with a total of 16 segments, I would rotate my shape for 90 degrees, which is 1/4 of 360 degrees. And to do so, okay, so you click on your lathe object, and then you hold the Alt button, and then press the middle click to create your rotation point, and then you click on lathe, and then you click on apply, and this would create your lathe modifier. And then you will be able to move your brush accordingly, and then when you have your brush set, then you can create geometry. Okay, so with these various types of modifiers and manipulating brushes and working with them, I chose this part of the learning unit, and I want you guys to go ahead and create a temple. It could be a temple according to the book, the shape of an ancient Greek temple, or you can just Google the shape of a temple, picture of a temple online, and try to recreate it as closely as possible, and then create your geometry. You can use the template here when you create a new object, or you can use the files from the 4th chapter, the packages from the 4th chapter of the DVD with the first volume of the book, and create your temple, and then submit your compressed material or the compressed folder to the Blackboard. So with this, I hope that you will enjoy creating your ancient temple, the kind that you chose to create. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the Blackboard or send an email with your questions. Thank you. Bye.